So hey, welcome to welcome to Jermaine the Philomel, where today I'll be going through this is day one of the business expert series, microeconomics edition. I'm just going over microeconomics. Oh so this is I'm going over the microeconomic series for my business expert series, and just to to kick things off, I ask a simple question: what is economics? Why should we study economics? Why is it important? Right? So, if you don't know, microeconomics or even economics comes from the Greek word oikonomos, which means one who manages household. And so, whenever you think of terms of economics, or when I think of terms of economics, I think economics is just pretty much managing resources. I think of it as just a field that focuses on managing resources under the constraints under scarcity. But yeah, so I decided to focus on microeconomics because I wanted to take a first principles approach to my business expert series. Everything that deals with business, that deals with everything, affects the economics, affects economy. Business transactions or economic activities, economic transactions, everything. Decisions you make, even like right now, the time that I'm putting into making this video versus like going to work or doing something, going to work somewhere else or doing something else. It's economics. A lot of things is economics that we're doing, whether like I said, it's managing resources, whether it's time resources, energy resources, financial resources, whatever. It's management of resources under scarcity. So um in order to accomplish my goal of becoming a business expert, I've decided but yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So just transitioning over, I just want to tell you a quick story about why I decided to start studying microeconomics. Microeconomics was me taking the first principles approach to it. Like I said, I just said it, economics is everything. Every active business transactions affect economy. Um, it affects the economy. Um, and it's just it affects the economy. And I felt that studying economics would better help me to understand finance and accounting. But the main reason is this: the language of business is economics, finance, and accounting. If you don't have a firm grounding in those three, then you can't speak the language of business. And if you can't speak the language of business, some people do okay with their business. But as me, as someone who wants to eventually develop their own business, I have a business right now that I'm starting. Is Our Take Professional Writing Solutions. LLC, and that's just towards becoming a business planning expert, helping entrepreneurs and small business owners take their ideas, take their business concepts from the idea stage into actualization, realization, and that's what I want to be. I want to be an expert in that. So I'm learning more about microeconomics. I'm learning to speak the language of business before I transition into being a business planner. Business planner. So um, without any further ado, what I'm planning to do right here is just show you my learning process for this. I'm using Openstax. They're free books to study the foundations of microeconomics. I was going to use Manq's book, but I'm gonna use that later. It's just more so for the 10 principles and other things, but I'm gonna focus on this first, the free sources. Just learn more about learning economics, show you guys my process, how I typically go about things. I think I've already read 1.1, but and I don't really want to carry you through me actually reading this stuff. Or I might do one where I actually walk you through how I do it, and you can get a better understanding of how I do things. So yeah, so with no further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and get right into it. So but I'm gonna transition over here to this. So this is, let me log in. Right, and you see, I'm logged in. Just one. What is economics and why is it important? So, just going into it, I got my notepad right here and things like that. But I'm gonna just run through it another way. Or never mind. I'll do it another way in another episode. But so what is economics? Right. So when I go into it, what is economics? Why is it important? I kind of get an idea what this chapter is going to be about. It's going to be telling me what is economics and why it's important. So, learning objectives. These are oftentimes I find myself reading this and like, how do I know that I've learned what I needed to? And now I realize that learning objectives help you answer that question. So this is using project management terminology. This is my definition of done. When by the end of this section, when I am able to discuss the importance of studying economics in at least 1 to 3 sentences, explain the relationship between production and division, explain at least one relationship between production and division, the relationship between production and division of labor and specialization, 1 to 3 sentences at least, and evaluate the significance of scarcity. Then I will have I will have learned all of the information I learned the lessons that I need to from this section. And that's just how define my definition of done. So whenever I'm able to do these 3 tasks, then I have completed this. So until then, I have to do that. So typically, I got my notepad right here, and you'll see it later. So first things first. The first question I'm trying to ask to discuss the importance of studying economics. It's learning objective number one, right? Um, of course, you can go through it. Bam, introduction of Fred, the problem of scarcity, the division of labor and specialization, why the division of labor increases production, trade and markets, why study economics. So really, typically I read everything, right? But discuss the importance of studying economics. So bam. So right off the back, I'm gonna just show you how I do things. Right. So economics is the study of how humans make decisions in the face of scarcity. So what I typically do right here, I'm gonna go ahead and make my legend. I'll come right here. This is what I typically do. Um, Legend, yellow, just a regular highlight. Think a regular thing to note, is of average importance. Green is new terms. Blue just highlights examples. Red, red is just important to note. Pay attention to and study and commit to memory. That's pretty much my lecture, right? So economics is a study of how humans make decisions in the face of scarcity. So, just based off that, we obviously know what is green. These can be individual decisions, family decisions, business decisions, or societal decisions. If you look around carefully, you will see that scarcity is a fact of life. Scarcity means that wants for goods, services, and resources exceed what is available. So my definition, this is pretty much, I just look at it like this. And when demand when demand exceeds, or I'm saying what human wants for goods and services, yeah, that's demand. When demand exceeds supply, then you experience the phenomenon known as scarcity. Or put simply, it's when you want more than you have. So just putting that into mind, economics is all about studying how human economics is studying. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to look up this. Economics is all about studying how humans make decisions of allocating their resources, whether it's time, energy, or anything else, or financial resources under the constraints of scarcity. Whether as far as time, we only have 24 hours in a day, and while we would like to dedicate certain things to certain time slots, manage our time, we only have so many hours in the day to do certain all the things that we want to do. And it gets to the point that we have to budget our time resource down to certain things that need to get done within those time frames that's going to move us towards accomplishing our goal. And that's just one example of economics. And economics isn't just purely financial. There's financial economics and then there's non-financial economics, right? So, with that said, moving forward, resources such as labor, tools, land, and raw material necessary to produce the goods and services we want, but they exist in limited supply. Of course, the ultimate scarce resource is time. Everyone, rich or poor, has just 24 expendable hours in the day to earn income to acquire goods and services for leisure time or for sleep. At any point in time, there is only a finite amount of resources available. Right? And I think a good example of this, and just me diverging is like for me, I like to learn things. I want to learn Microsoft Excel, machine learning, programming, algorithms, mathematics, calculus, algebra, linear algebra, abstract algebra, set theory, logic. All of these things, geometry, all of these things I really want to learn, but they take a lot. They take up a lot of time. Um, they take up a lot of time in a day, and I work at least 4 to 8 hours of the day. If you go by the 888, you spend 8 hours, you use 24 hours in a day, you spend 8 of those hours sleep, you spend 8 of those hours at work, and you only have 8 hours to work. So really, you only have 8 hours in the day to get things done. And I've already listed like 6 things. And if you do it adequately, you're supposed to dedicate like 2 to 3 hours of studying one specific subject. You can split it up however you want, but 2 to 3 hours typically I treat it like a credit hours in college. You only have so many times, so I'm operating under scarcity. So you need to make decisions. What's the most important thing that I need to be studying to get me towards my goal? And that's where you ask certain questions to help filter out the things that's not necessary versus the things that are necessary. So we can focus on those, put those in scope, and start to act. That's just it is. And sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not so easy. Um, but that's just what I'm learning. Um, so Moving forward, thinking about it this way, in 2015, the labor force in the United States contained over 158 million workers. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the total land area was 3,794,101 square miles. While these are certainly large numbers, they are not infinite. Because these resources are limited, so are the numbers of goods and services we produce with them. Combine this with the fact that humans' wants seem to be virtually infinite, and you can see why scarcity is a problem. So, pretty much the biggest thing that I learned this is what I just took from all of this. This is what I just took from all of this. This gave me a definition, and that's why I did it. This gave me a definition, bam, example. It gave an example, right? Example of economics applied to life. That's what it did. Blah blah blah. This right here, all it did was just this was just expository. This was just expository passage that used illustrations, examples, and explanations to show uh, how scarcity, how the principle or concept of scarcity applies to our lives. And this is pretty much this is what I pretty much like in there too. You can see me take notes, and I'll come back and I get them. This is all it's doing, right? Um, says what this right here. Think about it. In the 2015 level, continue accordingly. Says 158 million workers. Total land area 3 miles. Certain large numbers. They're not infinite, but these resources and land is a resource. Technically, those workers are human resources. So are the numbers of goods and services we produce with them. So businesses, companies, business entities, government entities use these resources, human resources and non-human resources such as land, in order to produce goods and services that benefit society. And so this is just combined, but because, like I said, because we're operating under the premise of scarcity, then we only have a limited number of workers and a limited number of land in order to produce these goods against the demands of the consumers, which is virtually infinite. And that's why we're functioning under scarcity. And this is why we need to ask certain questions to filter out the process to make necessary decisions. This is all economics. That's just pretty much how I'm tying in everything together so far. This is just how my mind is working. Once again, that's just stuff. This is what Fred. I think what Fred is like the Federal Reserve Education or something like that. I forgot what FRED stands for. But I'll go through it. Uh, Introduction to Fred. Oh, before I even move forward. So, will I be able? Oh, yeah. So, the first thing is discuss the importance of studying economics. Uh, I'm about to say purely from my perspective, the importance of studying economics is that you get to see how people make decisions under scarcity. You get to learn all the terminologies and the principles and mathematical formulas used to evaluate and quantify how decisions are made. Personally, I think studying economics is important not only for businesses but also for households, which are the two main entities in microeconomics, because it helps these entities, these organizations, really manage their resources. And I even for myself, I even struggle with managing resources because I don't make plans, I don't quantify it, I don't act rationally sometimes. Even though I'm not gonna say rationally in the sense that not good it's not supported by I'm no rational means supported by good reason. And I don't act rational because an example of acting irrational is you have $24 and you have to go to work in the next and you have to go to work for the next 7 days and buy a bus pass that's $23.75. And instead of buying that bus pass, which you need to get to work in order to work, make income, and make more money, you decide to spend that $24 on food or something else. So now, you experience the opportunity cost and it's left, so now you spent your money on something that's going to get you food, but it's not going to get you more money, right? And and let's say you already have food at home, so it wouldn't be rational. It wouldn't even be rational to uh purchase that. A good decision with that limited resource is to use it to purchase the bus pass so you can get to work and make more money, right? And leverage the food that you have at home to sustain, you having no more money, extra money to purchase anything else. Now, you have other options to get more money, right? You can ask friends for help. You can do more work for help outside of stuff like that. And let's say you act on the constraint of you don't want to ask for help from family, from family or friends or nothing like that because you just don't want to. Then you have to come up with other means. But that's an example of not act. That's the importance of economics. You get to evaluate certain situations from an economical standpoint, looking at that, and hopefully it makes you a better decision maker, managing your resources, and also it helps you for whether you're a business or household, and it helps you to run your household better. You know, uh, I feel like economics is important, man. It's one of not only the language of business but the language of life. Like I said, because you have to manage these resources. When you're dealing with a family, you have to understand that you have to push from the mindset of this is the money that I have right now until I can find a way to generate more revenue for my family. So I have to ration out these resources accordingly. And pay attention to consumption rates and all that stuff just to better manage this stuff. And it's not always easy and it's not black and white, but if you learn it and you learn how to manage it better and take advantage of it, you can operate like a well-functioning organization or business. That's why economics is important. It teaches you the principles and skill sets that you need to manage your household, whether your household is a business, whether your household is a family organization. That is my belief. So we can cross out one, right? The next one is explain the relationship between production and division of labor. And I will get to that eventually. So, introduction to Fred. Data is very important in economics because it describes and measures the issues and problems that economics seeks to understand. All right. I think that's pretty important to know. A variety of data is important to make, to reason, to make decisions, all that you need data. A variety of government agencies publish economic and social data. For this course, we would generally use data from St. Louis Federal Reserve Bank's FRED database. FRED is very super friendly. It allows you to display data in tables or charts, and you can easily download it into spreadsheet form if you want to use data for other purposes. I'm gonna just go ahead and just put that right there on the side. The the FRED website includes data on 400,000 domestic and international variables over time in the following broad categories is money, banking and finance, population, employment, and labor markets, including income distribution, national accounts, production and business activity, including business cycles, prices and inflation, including the consumer price index, the producer price index, and the employment cost index. International data from other nations, US regional data, and academic data, including PIN world tables and NBER macro history database. All right. If you still do not believe that scarcity is a problem, consider the following. Does everyone require food to eat? Does everyone need a decent place to live? Does everyone have access to healthcare? Is every country in the world, there are people who are hungry, homeless, for example, and in need of healthcare. Just to focus on a few critical goods and services. Why is this the case? Is it because of scarcity? Let's delve into the concept of scarcity a little bit deeper because it is crucial to understanding economics. So, I'm trying to write an essay on this. I see this as like politics or rhetoric. Issues of a policy or a research project or does scarcity exist or does it not exist? Does it exist in concept or in theory and in concept or in theory, or does it actually exist? This is the way scarcity is defined. Is the scarcity, scarcity is what happens when, your supply, your demand exceeds your supply. And typically in economics, when demand exceeds supply, prices go up because you have to conserve those resources. So they become more valuable. So yeah, does scarcity exist or does it not? I know there's one book, I think it's called Abundance Economics, and they shift from scarcity to abundance. Does it exist? Can you make a case for it? I think right there, right here. Does does scarcity exist or does it not exist? Right? Two essays that make a case for scarcity. And one one against it. That is something I'm definitely gonna take on. It's just indulging with it. The problem of scarcity. Think about all the things you consume: food, shelter, clothing, transportation, healthcare, and entertainment. How do you acquire those items? You do not produce them yourself, you buy them. How do you afford these things? All right, so this is the all right, so this is the end of this part one of this section, and I'm gonna have part two coming up real soon.